special guest, Hemat Taneja. I hope I got that name right.
You did?
He's managing director in General Catalyst and author of Unscaling, and investor in Stripe, Grammarly, and Snapchat, which are great companies amongst many others. We are very pleased to have you here with us.
Fantastic. I think we can see Hemat here. Okay. So Hemat, thank you for joining us. This is Perspectivas Globales, effectively a program that seeks to help entrepreneurs on the island of Puerto Rico by providing them with a global perspective on business opportunities and how to engage the talents that we have here outside of the island. Hemat, you and I have known each other for quite some time. I actually think it might have been 1994 when I hired the first ever intern for myself. You've come a long way.
You told me it was a well-established program at that time.
It was,
so I think for everybody, I worked for Jose as part of my internship at MIT. This was at TI in Dallas in the Sensors and Infrared Laboratory. Is that right? Do I remember that correctly?
That is right. That is right. In fact, I just saw a picture my dad happened to coincidentally send me of that laboratory where you were working at until about 4 in the morning, I think, before we ran off to IHOP or Denny's or something.
Yeah, I remember those nights.
So how did you go from being an intern studying, 5 degrees at MIT to an entrepreneur?
Well, so I was, so this is now 1999, and I was in the PhD program at MIT. And my goal at that time, I don't know if you remember, we used to talk about this, was to actually go into academia. And so here I was learning around about different disciplines and thinking about an academic life. And then in parallel, what was happening was the whole internet boom. So there was this whole movement on campus where I saw faculty as well as students working on building companies, spinning out, especially out of the computer science department. It just felt like a moment in time. And when you feel like there's a real sort of innovation tide happening, you try to seize it. So it just felt like it was something I should be part of, and so I decided to take a sabbatical, which obviously I never went back. I partnered with a couple of my graduate school friends, and we jumped into trying to build software platform for the mobile space. I mean, now remember in 1999, we had very, very beginnings of mobile data, and the space really didn't take off till 2006 when the iPhone arrived, but it certainly seemed like this was going to be the future. And so, we decided to seize the moment and jump into it and start a company.
And how'd that go for you, Hemat, that first company?
Oh, why are you putting salt on my wounds? Because you know the story too well. Look, I have to say, we incorporated the company, and as I said, I was going to be a professor, so I knew nothing about business. I was like, okay, well, how do we fund this? And that's when I started thinking about going and meeting investors. We raised a little bit of money. We started building essentially a platform for building applications on mobile devices. And we went and got some revenue from customers. We started building. We hired 40 of our best friends from MIT that were really good engineers. And as I said in the beginning, the market actually didn't take off till 2006. So we were literally 7 years too early working on building a business like that. And it took me 3 years to realize that. And frankly, we'd gone from zero to like a couple $1 million run rate. So it wasn't that we didn't get any traction, but it was clear that the market itself wasn't really going to inflect. And as a result, and then when there were some exogenous events like 9/11 that happened and so on. And at that point, I just decided we should just go sell the business. And we ended up transacting it because, as I said, it was clear to us that timing was too early.
So a couple of years later, you said you started and you knew nothing of business, but you've become a really successful investor. So how does your framework for investing, like, what have you figured out? Is it because in your book Unscaled, you pretty much go through how you see companies and how you see things moving forward. Yeah, how did you come up with that? How did you transition from being an
Well,
engineer and to
I,
like being a business person investing?
I think first and foremost, that experience for those 3.5, 4 years of building a company, it just gives you a lot of empathy for the process and how hard it is. And sometimes I joke that I probably made all the mistakes there were to be made in building a company because we were just so bad at it, to be very honest. And so I think having done it was an important um, sort of experience because it gave me a framework. It gave me a framework of just thinking about timing about markets, right? Thinking about sort of early customer traction and products, and um, frankly, when I joined General Catalyst after selling the business, I joined as an entrepreneur in residence because I was 26 at that time, and I basically said, okay, I made all the mistakes I needed to. Let me go actually build one and be successful at it. And obviously, things didn't pan out to go start another business, and I'm still here. Almost 20 years later. But through those 20 years, to answer your question, I have experimented with many different ways to invest. And if you were to say, what are the three orthogonal uh, uh, pieces of signal you have in evaluating a company? This is me as an investor talking. It's the people, it's the product, and it's the market. And when I first started investing, I sort of leaned into my own orientation, saying, "Hey, I'm a technologist." Sort of. Jose will laugh at me when I say that, but I will go invest in companies that have great technology. And I actually failed miserably doing that because it often doesn't have the signal for, is this going to be a great company or not. And then I decided I'm really going to lean into understanding which people are going to end up building great companies. And once I figured that out, and I sort of started training myself to think about every business in a people first way, it gave me a framework that worked out really well for me. And I've been able to take that into different industries and find market leading companies, or essentially, I would say, people that build market leading companies early on and invest in them. And we can go into that more if you'd like, but
I would love to go more into that because like my way of seeing it would be like, what's the great business model? What's the right technology? But you're telling me it's the whole way around. It's people.
yeah, look, the number one thing the first question I ask entrepreneurs is, why did you start this company? And it's actually informed by my own experience, because I started a company because everybody else was starting a company, and I would go sit with my smart friends in a bar and say, let's go start a company. And that's the absolute wrong reason to start a company, right? And I think um, you have to be passionate, and you have to have a core insight that's driving you to start a company. Like, this is, probabilistically, um, starting a company leads to failure. More than 50% of the companies, a lot more than 50% of the companies fail. So it has to almost be a way of life. And the only way to do that and attract, terrific people to come work for whatever you're doing is because you have a great sense of purpose and mission around what you're building. So I think that tells me a lot. Then if I believe in um, sort of the core insight that's driving a founder to start a company, then I like to understand how they learn. And the best founders, when they come explain what they're trying to work on, are almost historians of their space. They know exactly why the world works the way it works in their own industry that they're trying to disrupt. They have looked into historically which companies were great and why. They looked into why policy and regulation is the way it was, and and they look into why there's an opening as to you can do something disruptive in the future. So I think that that is important. And then the last thing I ask for is to understand who they hired and why. Because at the end of the day, what you need is a great start and an ability to attract great people to build foundational companies. And do they have followership from the smart people that they know in their life? Are they resourceful enough to inspire the very best people in the areas they're building to come work for them? It tells me a lot. And then those are the ingredients that suggest if the company is going to be excellent or not.
Thank you.
So, I've been back now in Puerto Rico full time 3 years. You know the way. It's been a little while since you've been to Mayaguez, West, but hopefully, if that cough's not the pandemic, you'll be back here soon.
Yeah, no, I look forward to it. No, I'm vaccinated. I'm good.
for a visit. I think it's interesting. I remember when you told me um, you were moving from Boston to the Valley, and I remember visiting that little house that you had there on the mountain when I got there, and I thought, wow, Hemat's doing some pretty great things. You were moving to the Valley, right? And a lot of what I struggle with here in helping entrepreneurs in Puerto Rico who I think fit, many of whom fit very well into what you've characterized, passionate about their business. We have a couple of entrepreneurs company Into Health that's developing, mobile cooling devices for diabetics. We have companies that are doing e-logistics, trying to sort of be the company that moves goods between companies, efficiently. When I talk to these companies, the thing that struggles me, that I struggle with the most is how do they get unscaling here in Puerto Rico, right? How can
Yeah.
help, or how can we help as an island to allow those companies to really grow up here, right, and impact the local economy and that sort of thing.
Look, I think so. 10 years ago, I moved to the Bay Area because I had a strong belief that a disproportionate number of great companies were going to get built in the Bay Area. 10 years later, because of the pandemic, I have a strong belief that the very best companies are going to be built on Zoom. Meaning, I think this idea of distributed culture and being able to start a company from anywhere, being able to rent all the capabilities you need from platforms, which is what my first book was about. That it's going to be a lot more democratized. So I think that it kind of doesn't matter where you are anymore, from my standpoint. So we think a lot about the fact that as a result, our own business has to be a lot more global, and we're investing actively all over the world because if you have passion for a problem and if you can be an inspirational leader, you can start a company anywhere. We just backed somebody who was building a company in Mongolia. Okay, and just to give you an idea, and so if great companies can come out of Mongolia, a lot of great companies come out of where you are, right? So in some ways, this pandemic has been a terrific equalizer of innovation, and um, you know, I also think, and I've been on record saying this, that the last 10 years and the next 20 are in some ways the golden age of venture capital and technology. Like, I mean, it's a sort of a centennial shift because we're literally organizing all core services in society, on the web, sort of digitally thinking about it, and there's no shortage of ideas. So I think entrepreneurship as a way of life is actually disruptive. is a phenomenal time to be embracing that.
So from
You mentioned, yeah.
I was just going to say,
I was going to say, you mentioned, go ahead, go ahead.
We'll make Zoom better, more fast with the voice transition. So just to follow up on that, what kind of policies do you see then from, local governments and state governments and different countries, I guess, that can kind of facilitate what you see coming? When a company today talks about doing business on the internet, I have to remind them that if they sell more than a certain amount of money to customers in the state of Utah, then they have to collect state income tax in Utah. So I tell them, hey, go sign up for Shopify. That building an internet retail business isn't what it used to be. How do you see that playing out, and what sorts of things should we be looking for?
I think to me, it's I'm not sure policy is what's going to drive this. To be honest, I think it comes down to a vibrant talent ecosystem. So places where there are strong universities, so you can actually build teams and scale companies. So there's critical mass. I think that's important. Anybody can start a company anywhere in the world, right? Like, policy doesn't prevent you from it, and I think policy is not going to enable you either. Then the rest is about being resourceful and understanding how to build these companies that are a blend of in-person and virtual. You can go hire anybody anywhere in the world, and internet allows you to be able to access them as well. So I personally think it's less about policy, and it's more about, wherever entrepreneurs start building companies and demonstrating success, there's a flywheel going, because then people that are in those companies leave and they start other companies. And as I said, pandemic has been an equalizer, and my bet is the next 10 years, it's going to be very hard to say where that next great company comes out of. It's not going to be, just go invest in the Valley or invest in, Boston or New York or London, or Delhi. It'll be from all parts of the world. So the disadvantages of not being in these places have, in my opinion, actually gone away. It's in some ways, it's the best time to start a business, because you can be anywhere and build them.
But countries like ours, but I think you just pretty much summed it, because we have a place like Puerto Rico doesn't need to have everything inside. Like, we can zoom out and use technology to get what we don't have, and concentrate on where we can add value in the value chain. Is that pretty much what you're saying as an entrepreneur for here?
Yeah, focus on the problem. I think you have every resource available to you that somebody here, in San Francisco has, for example. It really does come down to following your passion, and using the power of the internet to attract people wherever they may be to come do this with you. It's a different way to build companies than what it used to be. If somebody came and said to us 5-10 years ago, I have a company, I have 12 people, and they're in 12 different cities, we would basically look at that and say, that's a terrible company. Just like, how are they ever going to build something interesting? We don't want to invest. Doesn't matter what the idea is. We'll just be like, this is just a bad idea. I think now we have, I'll give you an example. We have a company called GitLab. It's now 1,000 people, and it's probably in 700-800 different locations. And it's one of the best software companies that's getting built today. It's probably worth $10 billion, founded 6 years ago, really, really fast growth. And the point is, it's an excellent company. And it kind of doesn't matter where the headquarters are or anything. So it kind of just matters that the founder had a great vision and they were able to attract talent wherever. And so you know, it's the future. We really believe that.
We were talking earlier about individuals and like how you look at people when and founder comes in and he's not a technical founder. Like how do you look at that? Would you tell people who are studying business or studying some other things like you need to learn the foundations of tech if you're going to be a tech founder, or simply being able to recruit these people and get them in love with your idea and being a great manager? Is it enough? Like how do you look at these things? Do you need to see a technical founder in the team? Like how do you see it?
I if a founder, um, he or she doesn't have the technology orientation, my advice would be to think about finding a co-founder that complements you, so that you've actually got, a couple of people at the core that understand the market and the idea and the motivation and the ability to execute, because you're going to need that. I think if you don't have that from the beginning, you just disadvantage yourself. I mean, there are founders that can code themselves and are also product centric, and and they can build companies as um, just one person, sort of at the helm. But more often than not, we see co-founding teams where people can complement themselves.
What do you see as the biggest barriers for entrepreneurs? You come across a lot of them that are just getting started, outside of the fact that they have their first company probably is going to fail, just like mine did, and yours didn't. But
No, it did. It did. I think the look, there's so many ingredients into what makes a company successful, including market timing and whatnot. Like you can't worry about that. Like you have to start a business because you're just really passionate about solving a problem. And if you focus too much on the marker of you know putting a lot of pressure on yourself on, is this succeeding day one, is it succeeding day one, I think you psychologically make it difficult to navigate that. So there's uh, I've seen success in every which way. I mean, there's some companies that just come out of the gates and they were at the right time and the right idea and the right people to do it, and they just keep inflecting. And Stripe that we mentioned earlier, it's $100 billion company in 10 years. I met the two brothers when I was teaching at MIT, and there was nothing 10 years ago, right? Because they were just right time, great people, and sometimes you have to zig and zag, and it takes a while before things really work. So it's you just have to have the patience, the perseverance, and the passion to want to go along and be patient about it. Take your time. It's not meant to be easy.
well, one of the things I liked about unscaling is that it really allows, or it seems to allow, the opportunity for the founder or the founder's team to focus on what's really important for that business, right? You don't have to worry about if your business is related to financial transactions, or you don't have to worry about taxes and accounting and human resources and things like that. Most businesses don't have that luxury. And one of the things I've been sort of struggling with is, what's sort of uh, a poor person's way of unscaling when they're starting their business, right? So if I'm starting and I don't have, tens of millions or $100 million in the bank, how can I focus on what's important and try to, not overspend my time in other things which are just, frankly important as well, but aren't going to necessarily determine the success of my business.
Yeah. So look, when you start a business today, you almost have to ask yourself, what is directly relevant to figuring out the product and the product market fit with a customer around my idea, and how do I use external resources to do everything else, right? And it's almost like that. So you certainly rent computing from AWS or a Google Cloud or what have you when you start a company. Think the same way about how do you run your back office financial and accounting operation. You can outsource everything, right? I mean, if you can focus all your energy on trying to understand the development of the core idea and the product and iteration with customer feedback and everything else you can just leverage outside resources. That is the essence of unscaling. If you have a hardware company, you can spend your time trying to get a factory up and running, even if you had infinite amount of money, or you can say, I'm just going to outsource the production of these devices to a Flextronics or whatever else. I need to focus on what are the right interfaces and what is that customer experience. I don't need to necessarily focus on how to make it or how to run my accounting books or how to uh, you know go focus on customer um, building software to manage customer relationship, right? Because I can use CRM stuff that exists. Just take all these platforms that have been created and focus on the main thing. I mean, it's like there's that age-old saying, right? The main thing is to make the main thing the main thing. I think when people start companies, they often try to focus on all these other things to say, I got to get this done, and then I'll go work on what my product and my customer interactions. No, forget all that. Just focus on making sure you you're focusing on the priority. I mean, it's another way of saying the same thing is you make a list of what are the risks that you have to um, uh, address in building that company. Sort of make a list of those, and you work on the highest risk stuff the fastest. I mean, goes back to the mindset of I'd rather know early if the business is going to work or not. So work on the most important things first, not the other things.
So I think we have a couple of questions in the chat. Maybe you want to go over one of them or two.
Sure. While I'm looking at those, let me just, Hemat's going to be able to stay with us a few minutes extra. So one of the things that we have gotten quite a bit of attention regarding in Puerto Rico are tax incentives. Basically, we've got this unique relationship. We're part of the United States, but we're also very different than your typical state. And over the last several years, that's caused, frankly, a lot of people that never would have thought about living in Puerto Rico to come down and some of them bring in their money and buying buildings and building businesses. Others just starting their businesses here so they can export services to the U.S. and frankly, if you're paying 4% income tax as opposed to 40% income tax, it can make a big difference for those businesses. What do you think about those types of incentives?
Look, I think the incentives are great because they impact the capital efficiency of being able to build a business, right? This gives you much more runway to be able to build the business. I feel like where you are, there is a great talent pool, so you can always create a good nexus of people to start the company with. Um, like one of the questions here is, well, okay, if you're a student entrepreneur, I'm just sort of reading in one of those questions lists, like what advice around building sort of attracting investors. I personally think student entrepreneurs are really interesting because one of the things that's really important to build great businesses is having first principles thinking. And when you're starting out from scratch, you don't have any biases. You don't have you're able to question everything from first principles as to why it works the way it works and bring fresh thinking to it. So the more you can articulate that to investors as to what's driving you to work on the business that you're working on, it does become interesting for investors. We have a whole program where we focus on a couple of universities in the US, and the entire goal is to invest in student entrepreneurs because we like the fact that they think with complete naivete. They don't accept the world and status quo for what it is, and that they challenge every assumption. So I think if you demonstrate that, um, you know, and you can also demonstrate, by the way, why you are the right person to work on that idea. I do think that ends up being the alignment of those two as to, some core insight and challenging some assumptions in a business, and showing credibility that you're the right person to be working on that particular idea goes a long way. I mean, that's generally what we're looking for to support entrepreneurs that are coming straight out of college. My best investment was entrepreneurs straight out of college. They dropped out. They were 19 and 17. The founders of Stripe. So actually, same thing with Evan. He dropped out of Stanford to do Snapchat. So I think there's plenty of interest in backing student entrepreneurs. It just has to be that you're looking for that reasoning as to why you're building a company.
Hemat, to the students out there, he's not suggesting you drop out. It's just qualifying that.
I'm not suggesting that. My only point is that there is no time when you can. My second best investor, the founder, the founder is 61 years old, and it's just to give you two data points, and so it's not about how successful you were in the past or you're just getting out of college. It really is about that first principles thinking and why you're doing what you're doing, and having a point of view that's differentiated.
And what would you say, thinking back on your university time, what was the most valuable part of that experience?
I think for me, I studied pretty broadly, and it just allowed me to become a good systems thinker. So I always think about markets in the context of all the stakeholders, and I think that skill set, in hindsight, has allowed me to go into different industries and understand where the leverage points are. What has to change for healthcare to fundamentally change, or what has to change for fintech as a space to fundamentally change? To get those opinions right, you have to be a good system thinker that's really understanding the overall mechanism of an industry or what have you. So I would say that's probably what I lean on the most. And then I think the second part of this is my investor hat on, being a good investor, is understanding people, and that is I wouldn't say I learned that at MIT. I think I learned that on the streets of Delhi. In terms of just having fundamental common sense of dealing with people. So that gives you a good combination of IQ and EQ that's required to do the job that I do.
So I want to start the process of wrapping up here with you. But Edgardo, did you have any other quickie questions for Hemat?
Pretty much covered it. Thank you very much, Hemat.
Yeah. And then Hemat, I would say, we're a resource here. I've been helping out the University of Puerto Rico in Mayagüez, and some pretty exciting opportunities growing in Puerto Rico. What can we do to help you be successful? Because I know you're still on that high rising upward trajectory. So how can we help you here?
Well, look, I first of all, I look forward to visiting at some point. Sounds like there's a vibrant ecosystem there. Look, we want to meet great folks that are starting companies like what we just discussed, and the other thing that'd be interesting is there's a lot of great talent coming out of the universities, and we'll make sure our companies are aware of being able to recruit out of there too. There's a shortage of great technology talent to build all these companies. Not everybody is necessarily going to have that alignment and mission and idea to start a company, but they can certainly join a mission-driven company. So I think that's another way to engage with the talent on the island with our companies.
Well, we're happy to help. Just reach out to us anytime that you like. And I want to thank everybody for being here with us today. And next week, we actually have you remember Namish?
Oh yeah, of course I remember Namish.
He's going to be with us in a couple of weeks on May 4th.
Oh, great. That's great. Yeah. Terrific. Say hi.
We'll do that. We'll invite you too in case you want to give him some questions. And the only thing I ask him is the next time you do come to Puerto Rico, give me some notice because I need to do some table tennis training because I want to rematch. I still remember when you beat me up on my own table 25 years ago. So.
I remember that. That was fun. We'll do it again. It's good to be with everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much from the PG team and for everybody that has joined us through this Zoom call. If it's not much to ask, we would like to have a selfie with you, with the rest of the participants of the call today. So if you don't mind, just one more minute and Galia will take a picture real quick. Galia, are you ready?
Give me a second.
Yeah. Let me just take out the spotlights and let's do that. Take it away.
Okay, I'm good.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.